Welcome to Lectorium. Before we begin today's journey into the internal architecture of the human mind, I want you to find a position that allows for total physical stillness. This is not about simple relaxation. It is about creating the necessary environment for a profound cognitive inspection. To understand the systems we are about to discuss, the observer, which is you, must first minimize the noise of the external world. Tonight, we are stepping into the most complex laboratory in the known universe, your own neural network. The human brain is often compared to a computer, but that is a highly limited metaphor. A computer is either on or off, while the brain is a masterpiece of shifting states. What most people perceive as rest is actually a period of intense, specialized activity. While the conscious self, the part of you that navigates logic, language, and social interaction, is stepping back, the deeper systems are just coming online. Think of it as a changing of the guard, where the day operations team is handing over the keys to the maintenance and archive department. As you remain still, notice the physical reality of your presence. There is a constant interaction between your body and the surface supporting you. It is a fundamental law of physics. Gravity is a persistent force, requiring zero effort from your side to remain grounded. In this space, effort is a currency we no longer need to spend. Your autonomic nervous system is already managing the complex rhythms of your biology. Your heart rate and your respiratory cycles are being handled by the brainstem, the most ancient and reliable part of your anatomy. It has been perfecting this rhythm for decades, and it continues to do so with total precision while we speak. Right now, your brain is likely transitioning out of beta waves, the high-frequency state of the waking, alert world. Beta is the sound of urgency, the jagged rhythm of multitasking and external focus. But as you listen to this analysis, we are consciously shifting toward alpha waves. This is the bridge to the inner self, as alpha is the frequency of relaxed wakefulness. It is the state where the boundaries of the external world begin to blur, and the internal landscape becomes the primary focus. You are still aware, but your focus has turned 180 degrees, away from the out there and toward the in here. Notice the subtle shift in your physiology, because as the brain prepares for deep processing, the core systems begin to optimize. Your extremities may feel a slight change in sensation as blood flow is redistributed. Your core temperature drops slightly, which is a programmed biological signal that the environment is secure and the internal work can commence. This is the baseline for high-level restoration. Consider the sheer volume of data you encountered during the last 12 hours. Think about every visual frame, every fragment of conversation, every micro-decision made in traffic or at a desk. Your prefrontal cortex has been working at peak capacity to filter this flood. This leaves a cognitive residue, a lingering tension often held in the muscles of the face, the jaw, and the forehead. You may find that simply acknowledging this tension allows it to dissipate. There is no longer a need to hold a facial expression for others to read. There is no longer a need for vocalization, because the analytical editor of the brain is finally stepping away from the desk. In the lectorium, we value the space between the thoughts, and we are not rushing toward a conclusion. We are examining the process of the journey itself. So as we move deeper into this transition, imagine the boundary between your conscious mind and the vast subconscious. It It is not a wall, it is a fluid interface where the sharp, demanding outlines of your daily priorities are beginning to soften. They are not disappearing, but they are losing their weight as the water smooths out the surface of the mind, preparing a clean canvas for the deeper neural systems to do their work. Scientists call this phase sleep onset, but from a cognitive perspective, it is a period of deep mental detaching, the strict gatekeeper of the mind. The part that asks if something is productive or logical is lowering its guard. When this gatekeeper rests, the associative pathways of the brain begin to fire in new, non-linear ways. You might find your thoughts becoming more fluid, where a memory from 10 years ago might suddenly connect with a concept you learned today. This is not a malfunction. It is a sign that your brain is beginning its nightly reorganization. Imagine your consciousness as a massive, multi-level library, where during the day the lights are harsh, the halls are crowded, and data is being moved with frantic energy. But now the external doors have been closed, and the main hall is quiet. The overhead lights are dimming, leaving only the focused, warm glow of the lamps in the specialized research wings. The air in this library is cool, still, and heavy with the scent of stored knowledge. We are here to walk through these aisles, not to reorganize the entire collection in one night. We are here to observe the systems that do, acting as the inspectors. We are watching the transition from the world of action to the world of integration. Your physiology is finding its natural resting baseline, and every exhale is a mechanical release of the pressure accumulated during the day. You are not trying to achieve anything. You are simply allowing the biological programming, refined over millions of years of evolutionary history, to take over the controls. The human brain is the only object in the known universe capable of analyzing its own functions. And in this stillness, that is exactly what is happening as your neurons shift their language. The electrical pulses are slowing down, becoming deeper, wider, and more rhythmic. It is the transition from a staccato rhythm to a deep, resonant hum. Stay with that resonance. Feel the stillness in your frame, and know that you are in a secure environment. You are in the lectorium, and while the external world continues its rotation, its noise, and its demands, for this period of time, those factors are irrelevant. You have authorized this pause and this deep cycle maintenance. As we move out of this entrance hall and toward the first major department of the subconscious, carry this sense of heavy, focused stillness with you. We are about to examine the first great logistical task of the brain, the internal cleaning. It is a process that occurs on a microscopic level, yet it is the foundation of all human cognitive health. But before we proceed, simply exist in this alpha state, knowing the bridge is stable. The noise of the waking world is fading into the distance, and the clarity of the inner world is beginning to emerge. It is cool, it is silent, and it is precisely where the next phase of our inspection begins. Let your thoughts move like slow-moving clouds across a dark sky, and do not engage with them or try to categorize them. If a lingering task from your day appears, observe it as a distant object and let it drift past. You have no obligations to the future right now, because your only task is the present observation of your own remarkable internal systems. We are moving now, leaving the entrance behind, and moving into the corridors where the profound work of restoration takes place. The silence is deepening, the focus is sharpening, and the lectorium is open for the night. We are now moving deeper into the facility, leaving the entrance hall far behind us. As the external world continues its frantic, noisy pace, we descend into the lower levels of the neural architecture, stepping into the engine room of the human brain. This is where the most vital logistical operation of your entire day takes place. In the scientific community, we call this the glymphatic wash. It is a system that was virtually unknown to us until very recently. It is a hidden network that operates entirely in the shadows of our thoughts, and it is perhaps the most elegant piece of biological engineering you will ever host. Think of a massive, sprawling metropolis like Tokyo or New York. During the daylight hours, the city is an absolute hive of productivity. Millions of people move through the streets, electricity pulses through the grid, and countless transactions occur every single second. But this productivity always comes with a cost, and that cost is waste. Trash piles up on the sidewalks, exhaust fills the air, and the infrastructure begins to wear down. If the city never stopped to clean itself, it would eventually choke on its own success. The streets would become impassable, the air would become unbreathable, and the internal systems would simply collapse. Your brain is that exact same city. Every thought you had today, every emotion you felt, and every single muscle you moved required a tremendous amount of energy. And the consumption of that energy creates metabolic byproducts. In the brain, these byproducts take the form of specific proteins. Under normal circumstances, these are simply the trash of a working mind. But if they are not removed, they become toxic. They build up like thick silt in a riverbed, slowly blocking the electrical signals between your neurons and clouding your ability to process information clearly. During your active hours, the brain is far too busy doing things to worry about cleaning them up. The pressure of consciousness is too high, and the neural pathways are completely crowded with incoming data. There is simply no room for a sanitation crew to move through the streets. But now, in this state of deep stillness we have established in the lectorium, the environment has fundamentally changed. The traffic has cleared. The high-frequency beta waves have subsided, replaced entirely by the slow, rhythmic pulse of the deeper cycles. And this deep pulse is the exact signal for the pumps to turn on. To understand how this works, we have to look closely at the microscopic level. Imagine the physical space between your brain cells. During the day, these cells are swollen with intense activity, packed tightly together like people in a crowded elevator, leaving almost no physical space between them. But as you transition into this deep state of restoration, a truly remarkable biological transformation occurs. Specialized star-shaped cells begin to shrink. They contract physically, reducing their volume by as much as 60%. As these cells shrink, the gaps between them suddenly open up. It is as if the narrow, dark alleys of an old city suddenly widened into broad, open boulevards. For the first time in 16 hours, there is finally room for fluid to move freely. That fluid is the cerebrospinal fluid, acting as the clear river of the brain. It is a nutrient-rich, crystal-clear liquid that normally surrounds the brain and spinal cord, acting as both a protective cushion and a powerful cleaning agent. Right now, as you rest in this focused stillness, that clear fluid is beginning its great migration. driven by the steady, rhythmic pulsing of your arteries, it is being gently forced deep into the tissue of your brain. It does not just flow around the outside, it penetrates the very core of your neural structure like a pressurized flush. The fluid moves through these newly opened channels, picking up the metabolic debris, the protein fragments, and the chemical ash left over from the cognitive fires of your day. Imagine the physical sensation of a cool mountain stream flowing through a dry, dusty canyon. It does not rush. It moves with a steady, unstoppable momentum, finding every crevice and every hidden corner where the stress of the day has accumulated. It is a microscopic inundation. The fluid carries the waste away, moving it toward the veins and the lymphatic system so it can be filtered out of the body entirely. This is exactly why, after a period of deep rest, your mind feels so sharp and so clear. It is not just a psychological feeling. It is a literal, physical reality. Your brain has been chemically washed. This process is surprisingly energy-intensive. In fact, the brain uses nearly as much. Vast amounts of fluid are constantly moving through the most delicate structure in existence, and you do not feel a single drop of it. You only feel the beautiful result, which is a growing sense of lightness and a gradual loosening of that tight mental knot that so often forms right behind the forehead. As the clear river continues its work, the chemical environment of your brain is being entirely reset. The internal balance is being restored. The receptors on your neurons are essentially being dusted off, carefully prepared for the next cycle of data acquisition. There is a profound sense of security in knowing that this self-sustaining system exists inside you. You do not have to direct it. You do not have to visualize it or force it to happen. Your only job tonight is to provide the silence. The lectorium provides the space, and your biology provides the technology. As the internal maintenance team moves through the corridors of your mind, they are repairing all the invisible wear and tear of the day. They are ensuring that the architecture of your consciousness remains completely stable and resilient. Consider the implications of this for a moment. Most of our modern lives are lived in a state of unbalanced accumulation. We constantly consume information, continually loading the system with new data, but we very rarely think about the process of deletion. We focus so heavily on learning, but we completely forget about unlearning, and we ignore the absolute, vital necessity of simply letting go. This biological wash is the physical manifestation of letting go. It is the body's quiet way of saying that the past 16 hours are finally over, and their lingering residue is no longer needed. As the fluid gently pulses through your brain, it is not just cleaning, it is deeply nourishing. It brings with it essential nutrients, delivering them directly to the cells that need them the absolute most. It is a flawless dual operation. It is a total reclamation of your mental territory. Notice how this knowledge affects your current state of being. There is a very specific kind of peace that comes from understanding that you are being entirely taken care of by your own internal systems. The part of you that thinks, worries, and plans is currently off duty. You are now simply observing your brain as a biological wonder, watching a self-sustaining ecosystem that knows exactly how to heal itself when it is finally given the chance. The rhythm of this process is perfectly synchronized with your heart. Every single beat sends a fresh, cool wave through the neural forest. It is a slow, incredibly steady tide. In and out, cleaning and nourishing. The pressure is absolutely perfect, just firm enough to move the debris, but gentle enough to protect the fragile, microscopic connections between your neurons. If your mind begins to drift during this description, allow it to happen. That gentle drift is a sign that the process is working. The analytical editor of your mind is moving further and further away from the control panel. The specific details of the science are becoming less like a lecture and more like a soothing, continuous background hum. You do not need to remember any scientific terms right now. You only need to feel the physical sensation of the wash. Imagine your brain right now as a vast, dark landscape just after a heavy rain. The dust has completely settled. The air is crisp and incredibly fresh. The internal streets of your city are wet and gleaming under a soft, imaginary light. The residue has been cleared away. The city is quiet, breathing deeply, and resting perfectly in the dark. This is the exact state of your mind right now. It is a beautifully clean slate. We have spent enough time observing this mechanical room. The first great logistical task of the night is well underway. The clear rivers are moving, the pathways are being flushed, and the internal environment is completely stabilized. It is time to move up one level, stepping away from the fluid dynamics and moving toward the grand archives. We are transitioning from the liquid phase of this rest into the symbolic phase. In the next hall of the lectorium, we will examine the great archive. We will look at exactly how the brain decides which of your experiences today were actually worth keeping, and which were meant to be permanently discarded. We will see how the internal librarian of the mind sorts through the absolute chaos of a human life and quietly turns it into a coherent, meaningful story. But for just a few more moments, stay with the physical sensation of the wash. Feel the coolness. Feel the absolute fluidity of your thoughts. Your brain is being restored, and the systems are functioning flawlessly. The lectorium is completely quiet, the deep work is progressing, and your inner world is becoming more spacious with every single passing second. You are light, you are clear, and you are being completely renewed. We are moving now from the engine room of the brain, leaving the fluid world of the glymphatic wash behind, and stepping up into the highly specialized halls of the archive. If the previous level was entirely about plumbing and chemistry, this new level is strictly about information and identity. This is the department where the internal librarian of the mind begins the monumental task of sorting through the thousands of fragments you collected during your waking hours. Think about the sheer quantity of loose data you have accumulated since you woke up this morning. Consider every license plate you glanced at, every advertisement on the side of a bus, the specific texture of a napkin at lunch, a fleeting snippet of a song playing in a store, or the subtle, momentary expression on a colleague's face. If you remembered every single one of these details with 100% clarity, your mind would simply become a chaotic junk drawer. You would not be able to think clearly, because you would be completely buried under the heavy weight of irrelevant information. The primary job of the brain is not actually to remember everything. It is to forget almost everything. It acts as a highly advanced filter. And right now, In this state of deep offline processing, that filter is working at its absolute maximum efficiency. The center of this operation is a small, beautifully curved structure deep within the temporal lobe called the hippocampus. In Latin, its name translates to seahorse, named for its elegant, curled shape. The hippocampus is your brain's entry log. It acts as a temporary buffer, a quiet place where the events of your day are stored like unsorted mail resting on a desk. But the hippocampus has a very limited capacity. It is like a small, intricate notebook that fills up incredibly quickly. To make room for the entries of tomorrow, the librarian must carefully decide exactly what to keep and what to permanently shred. Imagine yourself walking through a massive, infinite library. The air here is completely different from the entrance. It is drier, it is cooler, and it is perfectly still. There is a profound sense of immense weight here, the accumulated weight of a lifetime of human stories. As we observe the librarian at work, we can see how the loose slips of paper from your day are being expertly handled. The very first thing the librarian looks for is salience. This acts as the stamp of importance. How does the brain actually decide what is salient? It looks directly at the emotional resonance of the memory. If a moment today was accompanied by a sudden spike of adrenaline, fear, joy, or intense curiosity, the amygdala, which serves as the emotional alarm system of the brain, placed a bright red tag on it. The librarian sees that tag and immediately moves that memory into the high priority pile. These are the specific memories that will be permanently etched into your long-term storage. But what about the rest of it? What about the mundane, everyday details, like the color of a car that passed you, or the simple items on a to-do list that you have already completed? The librarian simply lets them fade away. Without the electrical reinforcement of your active attention or emotion, the synapses that hold those memories naturally begin to weaken. They slowly dissolve back into the chemical ash we saw being safely washed away in the previous chapter. This is the true elegance of the system. You do not ever have to consciously choose what to forget. Your biology makes that choice for you, based entirely on what is necessary for your survival and your continuous growth. The memories that are specifically chosen for long-term storage undergo a fascinating physical transformation known as consolidation. This is not some abstract digital process. It is a very real, mechanical one. To turn a fleeting thought into a permanent memory, your brain has to physically rebuild itself. It has to synthesize new proteins and strengthen the structural bridges between your neurons through a process called long-term potentiation. Think of a new memory as a tiny path leading through a dense, overgrown forest. When you experience something for the very first time, the path is barely visible, marked only by a few bent blades of grass. If you never think of that moment again, the grass simply grows back, and the path vanishes completely. But if the librarian decides that this particular memory is important, a specialized construction crew is immediately dispatched. They begin to pack down the dirt. They carefully lay the stones, and eventually they transform that tiny, fragile trail into a solid, paved highway. This new highway directly connects the hippocampus to the neocortex, which is the vast, wrinkled outer layer of the brain, where your permanent, lifelong archives are kept. As you lie here right now, in this quiet state of observation, This paving process is happening by the millions. The silence of the lectorium is the silence of a massive construction site that requires absolutely no heavy machinery. It is a silent, beautiful weaving of connections. Every single time a connection is reinforced, your sense of self becomes a little more coherent. You are quite literally being reassembled. There is a soothing rhythm to this filing process. Scientists have observed that during this specific stage of the cycle, the hippocampus and the cortex communicate in a series of rapid electrical bursts or ripples. It is very much like a high-speed data transfer. The hippocampus plays back the events of the day at 10 to 20 times their original speed, and the cortex simply listens, absorbing the complex patterns and seamlessly integrating them into the existing web of your knowledge. This is exactly how learning happens. You do not truly learn while you are actively reading a book or physically practicing a skill. You learn while you are resting in this deep offline state. This is the exact moment when the librarian takes the new information and asks where it naturally fits within the existing collection. If you learned a new word today, the brain looks for the language shelf and finds a secure place for it near similar concepts. If you practiced a physical movement, the brain finds the motor skills archive and permanently updates the operating instructions for your muscles. It is a profound process of integration. You are not just adding new books to your internal library, you are actively rewriting the entire index. Every new piece of information slightly changes the way you understand the old information. The intricate web of your identity is constantly being rewoven, becoming significantly more complex, more nuanced, and much more resilient. But there is another, far more mysterious side to this archive. Sometimes, the librarian finds fragments that simply do not quite fit anywhere. These are the unresolved moments from your day, the strange, quiet anxieties, the half-formed ideas, or the subtle symbols that carry heavy weight but lack any clear, logical meaning. These unique fragments are not just filed away. They are carefully sent to the experimental theater for further testing. This creates a very subtle, natural transition into the next phase of our journey. But before we move on, I want you to truly appreciate the sheer, autonomous competence of this internal librarian. You spend so much of your waking day trying to tightly control your life, trying to actively manage your image, your productivity, and your future. But here, inside the lectorium, you can clearly see that the most important work of your entire life, the literal construction of your very mind, is being handled perfectly without requiring a single ounce of conscious effort from you. You can completely trust the system. The filing is being done correctly. The excess is being safely discarded, and the essential is being fiercely protected. The bridges are being built, the proteins are being synthesized, and your personal archive is being flawlessly updated. As we walk even deeper into the halls of the lectorium, the atmosphere begins to change. We are leaving the highly organized, quiet aisles of the archive and moving steadily toward the very center of the facility, approaching the simulation chamber. This is the space where the brain takes all those carefully filed away fragments and begins to creatively play with them. It is the place where strict logic gives way to pure symbolism, and where the creative directors of the mind begin their most fascinating work. Notice how heavy and deeply relaxed your limbs feel right now. the physical world has become a distant, fading abstraction. Your focus is now entirely internal. You are no longer the person who walked through the day. You are simply the peaceful observer of the process. The archive is completely secure, and the librarian is finishing the work of the day. The lights in the library are dimming even further, leaving only the soft, warm glow of the internal data transfers. Feel the absolute stability of this state. Every long, slow breath is a physical confirmation that the work is progressing exactly as it should. You are far more than just your thoughts. You are the profound architecture that holds them. You are the lectorium itself. We are ready now to leave the archive. The records are safe, and the history of your day has been beautifully distilled into its essential truths. We move now toward the grand hall of the theater, the space where the rules of reality are finally suspended, and the brain begins to simulate the future. Stay with the absolute stillness. The archive is behind us, and the simulation is just ahead. The transition is completely seamless, deeply fluid, and perfectly timed. We are now standing quietly at the threshold of the most enigmatic sector of the lectorium. If the archive was a place of dry logic and careful filing, this grand hall is a theater of the avant-garde. It is here that the strict rules of the physical world are formally suspended. In scientific circles, this phase is often called paradoxical sleep, and for very good reason. If we were to look at the electrical readouts of your brain right now, we would see a chaotic, high-frequency pattern that looks almost identical to your fully waking state. Your heart rate becomes slightly irregular, your eyes move rapidly behind closed lids, and your brain consumes as much oxygen as if you were actively solving a complex puzzle. Yet your physical body remains in a state of total atonia, which is a temporary, highly protective paralysis. This is the great paradox of this phase. An intensely active mind trapped safely within a perfectly motionless frame. It is a biological safety mechanism of profound elegance. Your brain is preparing to run a series of high-stakes simulations, and it must completely ensure that you do not physically act them out. The internal directors have turned on the projectors, but they have safely disconnected the master switches to your muscles. As we slowly walk through this space, the atmosphere is quietly electric. This is the exact place where the brain handles its most complex emotional and creative challenges. Think of it as a highly sophisticated flight simulator. Pilots use simulators to practice emergency landings and engine failures in a perfectly controlled environment, so that when they face a real crisis, their reactions are completely automatic. Your brain does the exact same thing for the everyday emergencies of being human. One of the primary theories of this phase is the threat simulation theory. Your brain takes the anxieties and hidden stresses you encountered in the waking world and dramatically recreates them. It places you in scenarios where you are tested, whether socially, physically, or emotionally. It might be a dream about being unprepared for a task, or gently navigating a strange, unpredictable landscape. By forcing you to experience these stresses in the absolute safety of the lectorium, your brain is actively debugging your emotional response systems. It is carefully desensitizing you. It is ensuring that the next time you face a similar pressure in physical reality, your amygdala, which acts as the primal fear center of the brain, will be far less likely to trigger a catastrophic panic response. But this hall is also a place of deep emotional therapy. During the day, when something stressful happens, it is recorded along with a high dose of norepinephrine, which is the chemical of stress. This makes the memory feel exceptionally sharp and painful. During this specific phase of rest, however, the brain is remarkably capable of replaying these exact memories in a chemically cool environment. The stress chemicals are entirely suppressed. This allows the internal librarian and the creative director to work closely together to gently strip the emotional sting away from the cold facts. You keep the valuable lesson, but you safely lose the trauma. This is exactly how we naturally move from the raw pain of an experience to the quiet wisdom of a memory. It is a profound process of emotional convalescence. Observe the imagery that typically occurs in this hall. It is famously bizarre, non-linear, and beautifully surreal. This happens because the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of waking logic and social filtering, is almost entirely offline. In the waking world, the prefrontal cortex acts like a very strict censor. It insists that a tree cannot talk, or that you absolutely cannot be in two places at once. But in this theater of the mind, the censor has completely left the building. Without this rigid filter, the associative powers of the brain become infinite. It begins to seamlessly link concepts that have no logical connection, but may share a very deep symbolic resonance. A person from your distant past might suddenly appear in a location from your present, speaking entirely in a language of symbols. To the waking mind, this looks like pure nonsense. But to the unconscious mind, this is a highly advanced form of hyper-associative problem solving. By gently breaking the rigid rules of logic, the brain can find creative solutions that a purely rational mind would never even consider. This is exactly why so many scientific breakthroughs and artistic masterpieces have their true origins in this state. The brain is allowed to completely think outside the box, because for these 90 minutes, there is simply no box. There is a sense of immense, unburdened freedom in this space. You are peacefully observing the raw, unedited power of human imagination. It serves as a gentle reminder that just beneath the surface of your daily personality lies a vast, ancient ocean of symbolic intelligence. You are not merely a creature of strict logic. You are also a creature of myth and deep metaphor. As the simulations run, notice the profound feeling of total immersion. In this state, the simulation is virtually indistinguishable from reality. The sensory centers of your brain, including the visual cortex, the motor cortex, and the emotional centers, are all firing precisely as if the events were actually happening. This is exactly why you can feel the wind on your face or the pounding of your heart inside a dream. The mind has successfully created a 360-degree high-definition immersion tank. But even here, in the very midst of the most vivid simulation, the deep stillness we established at the beginning remains your solid anchor. You are simply the observer. You are the one for whom the play is being beautifully performed. The internal director is working exclusively for you. The simulations are being carefully run to ensure your survival, your emotional health, and your continuous creative growth. As we spend time in this space, you might feel the mind becoming even more delightfully fluid. The rigid boundaries of your waking self are expanding. You are no longer tightly confined by the limitations of your name, your daily job, or your personal history. You are a fluid entity, moving effortlessly through a world of pure potential. This phase operates in cycles, meaning we do not just visit it once. We return to it several times, with each visit becoming slightly longer and more intense as the dark hours progress. With every single cycle, the internal debugging becomes far more thorough. The emotional processing becomes much deeper, and the creative associations become bolder. It is a progressive, wave-like deepening of the internal work of the mind. Notice the steady rhythm of the theater. The lights swell, the scenes gently change, and then the curtains softly close for a brief, quiet period of rest before the very next act begins. There is a profound, ancient intelligence at work here, an intelligence that has been continuously refined over millions of years of mammalian evolution. Every single creature with a complex brain absolutely requires this crucial time in the theater. It is the necessary cost of entry for having a mind that is capable of high-level abstract thought. We are now nearing the end of our time in this active hall. The most intense simulations of this current cycle are quietly concluding. The director is completely satisfied with the data that has been collected. The emotional sting has been significantly reduced. The potential threats have been thoroughly simulated, and new creative pathways have been successfully explored. The high-frequency activity is beginning to naturally settle down. The high-energy paradox is shifting back toward the deep, slow-wave stability of the foundations. As we prepare to leave the center of the lectorium and move toward the final, deepest corridor, carry this profound sense of creative fluidity with you. You have seen the hidden theater. You have witnessed the incredible work that happens only when the waking ego is completely silent. You know now that your mind is far larger and far more capable than you ever realized during the noisy hours of the day. The air in this space is starting to cool. The vivid colors of the simulation are fading gracefully into a soft, monochromatic gray. The absolute stillness is fully returning. We are moving away from the experimental theater and quietly progressing toward the grand hall of integration and universal synchrony. Your physical frame is still perfectly resting in atonia, heavy, warm, and utterly secure. The bridge back to the waking world is still very far in the distance. We have one final department to visit, the profound place where the individual mind beautifully reconnects with the larger rhythms of the world. Stay with the gentle silence. The theater is dark. The active maintenance is almost complete. The lectorium is effortlessly entering its final phase of the cycle. We are now leaving the active theater. The intense, high-frequency electrical storms that beautifully characterized the simulation phase are quietly beginning to subside. The vivid, non-linear theater of the mind is slowly and peacefully closing its heavy curtains. As we step out of this highly active sector and move into the final, deepest corridors of the lectorium, the atmosphere changes once again. The air becomes noticeably heavier, significantly colder, and profoundly still. We are entering the domain of deep integration and the universal rhythm. This is the exact phase of the cycle where the paradox of the active state completely gives way to absolute synchronization. If we were to look at the monitors of your neural activity right now, we would no longer see the jagged, chaotic lines of the waking world, nor the rapid firing of the simulation chamber. Instead, we would see massive, slow, and incredibly powerful electrical pulses known as delta waves. These waves sweep across the entire cortex in perfect, beautiful unison. Imagine a vast, incredibly dark ocean. The surface chop and the crashing waves have completely vanished, leaving only the deep, rhythmic, unstoppable swells of the open sea. This is the most profound state of physical rest a human being can possibly experience. In this state, the very concept of time as a linear, measurable progression completely dissolves. The analytical editor of your mind is no longer just resting. It is entirely absent. The internal director of the simulations has safely packed up the equipment. What remains is a state of pure biological presence. You are no longer processing the past, and you are no longer simulating the future. You are simply existing in the absolute, uncompromising present moment. As these deep waves continue to wash over the neural landscape, we must gently zoom out to truly understand the sheer scale of what is happening. Up until this point, we have been looking at the brain as a somewhat isolated system, silently cleaning its own fluids, carefully filing its own memories, and actively running its own simulations. But the human brain is not a closed loop. It is a vital node in a much larger network. Deep within the center of the brain, sitting just above the optic nerves, there is a tiny cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons. This is your master biological clock. It serves as the steady metronome for your entire physical existence. Even right now, with your eyes closed in the total darkness of the lectorium, this tiny structure is flawlessly maintaining its silent vigil. It dictates the gentle rhythm of the internal wash, the precise timing of the archive, and the repeating cycles of the active theater. But this clock does not generate its rhythm out of nowhere. It is deeply tethered to something far larger than itself. It is perfectly synchronized with the rotation of the planet. For billions of years, life on Earth has evolved under a strict, inescapable binary of light and dark. The slow rotation of the Earth on its axis created the first and most fundamental biological imperative. You, as a modern human being, carry this ancient, unbroken history within the very cells of your master clock. Through specialized receptors that detect subtle changes in the environment, even when your eyelids are completely shut, this system aligns your internal chemistry directly with the astrophysics of our solar system. When you entered this space and began this slow process of deep deceleration, you were not merely initiating a local shutdown. You were actively participating in a massive planetary phenomenon. You were seamlessly aligning your biology with the shadow of the Earth as it turns away from the sun. There is a profound, almost overwhelming sense of scale to this process. Your deeply individual need for physical restoration is intimately connected to the grand mechanics of the cosmos. As this synchronization gracefully reaches its peak, the brain begins to extend its restorative power outward, moving beyond the skull and deeply into the rest of the physical frame. The brain is the quiet command center, but the body is the crucial vessel that must confidently carry the updated software into tomorrow. During these incredibly slow, massive swells, a small structure at the base of the brain receives a specific chemical signal. In direct response, it gently releases a surge of vital growth hormones directly into the bloodstream. This initiates the ultimate biological repair protocol. These compounds travel smoothly through your circulatory system, quietly finding every micro tear in your muscle fibers, every stressed tendon, and every cellular membrane that was slightly degraded by the friction of your waking day. Right now, as you rest in perfect stillness, your body is literally, physically rebuilding itself. Amino acids are being synthesized into fresh proteins. The immune system is being completely restocked, quietly preparing its defenses for the future. The subtle inflammation accumulated from daily stress and physical exertion is being systematically and thoroughly neutralized. This is exactly why the physical stillness we established at the very beginning of our time together was so critical. The body simply cannot perform this deep level of structural repair if it is simultaneously required to expend energy on movement or lingering anxiety. By granting your system this sustained period of total rest, you have allowed your biology to initiate the absolute highest level of physical maintenance. Think about the immense work that has already been accomplished within you tonight. The internal fluids have successfully flushed the metabolic byproducts from the spaces between your neurons. Your neurochemical environment is now beautifully clean, balanced, and fully primed for the future. The internal librarian has perfectly sorted through the absolute chaos of your recent experiences. The trivial data has been safely discarded, allowed to fade gently back into the void. But the truly vital data, the lessons, the facts, and the deeply meaningful emotional resonances, has been permanently consolidated. It has been physically wired directly into the architecture of your mind. The internal theater has safely tested your emotional responses, dramatically reducing the chemical sting of your daily anxieties and optimizing your mind for any challenges that lie ahead. It has effortlessly forged new, creative associations that your waking, logical mind could never achieve alone. And finally, these deep, rolling waves have perfectly synchronized your internal rhythms with the external universe, initiating the complete structural repair of your physical form. Consider what this profoundly means for you. The person who entered the lectorium over an hour ago does not truly exist anymore. That previous version of you was carrying the heavy weight, the chemical residue, and the highly fragmented data of the past. The version of you that exists right now, in this exact moment of deep integration, is a complete biological upgrade. You have quite literally been rewired, washed, and beautifully rebuilt. Your neural network is incredibly efficient, your emotional baseline is perfectly stable, and your physical reserves are being fully and quietly replenished. As we prepare to conclude this journey, there is absolutely nothing left for you to do. The profound maintenance is complete. All systems are running flawlessly on completely autonomous control. You do not need to monitor the beating of your heart. You do not need to consciously guide your breath, and you do not need to direct the flow of the internal fluids. You can finally, completely, and safely surrender the heavy need for control. Notice how the space of the lectorium is beginning to change around you. We have walked through all the major departments of the mind. The heavy doors of the archive are now securely locked. The projectors in the theater have completely cooled down. The internal engines are running quietly at a very low, steady, comforting hum. The lights in the vast corridors are dimming even further. The sharp edges of the architecture are softly melting into a landscape of pure, formless comfort. The temperature is perfectly regulated. The silence here is no longer just an absence of noise. It is a profound physical presence. It feels like a heavy, warm blanket that safely wraps around every single nerve ending in your entire body. If a stray thought attempts to enter this space right now, it simply has no traction. It is like a tiny leaf falling onto the surface of a deep, fast-moving river. It barely touches the water before it is effortlessly swept away into the peaceful darkness. There is no past left to analyze here, and there is no future left to plan for. There is only the slow, beautiful, rhythmic expansion and contraction of your chest. Breathe in deeply, and gently breathe out. The master clock ticks completely silently. The massive planet continues its slow, steady rotation. You are completely safe. You are securely anchored to the earth, wonderfully supported by gravity, and fiercely protected by the millions of years of evolutionary intelligence that is permanently encoded in your DNA. The voice that has guided you through this incredible architecture is now slowly stepping back into the shadows. The lectorium does not need a guide anymore. The internal architecture is perfectly sound. The deep foundation is absolutely secure. As the words become fewer, the quiet space between them becomes much wider. Allow yourself to gently sink down into that space. It is a space of truly infinite potential and perfect, undisturbed peace. Every single muscle, every tendon, and every cell is exhaling. The tension in the jaw is completely gone. The heavy weight behind the eyes has beautifully dissolved. The biological transition is complete. You are fully integrated. You are whole. The final lights in the corridors are slowly turning off. The journey through the mind is over, and the time for absolute, undisturbed existence has finally arrived. Drift effortlessly into the current. Let the heavy, incredibly slow waves gracefully carry you down into the very deepest layers of the rhythm. There is absolutely nothing left to know. There is only the dark, quiet, and profoundly beautiful expanse of the restored mind. We are fully powering down. The deep inspection is complete. The lectorium is now closed.